You are now listening to Handsome Reads. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Come on. Leave the rest of the world behind for a little bit as we take a tour through yet another episode of Handsome Reads. Today, we continue our story of Army of Sin with episode 15, titled Rendezvous. This episode is set in the country of South Africa. Henri looked up from where he sat in the black seat of the navy blue sedan as the crunch of gravel beneath the tires reached his ears. The dust the turn raised as the driver 𝐵𝐿𝐴 turned into the private road did nothing to impede Henri's vision, able to see the angel that stood looking up at the front of the two-story house. Few mortals over the age of 7 were able to discern angels. 𝐵𝐿𝐴 was one of them, having been granted that gift through the link he shared with Henri. The energy floating in his body was not strong enough to cause any great change in body chemistry, but as the aid of one of the most wanted immortals, it was important to be able to spot incoming threats. They had been together for the past 2 years, and the big Russian looked hardly a day over 28, a far cry from the scrawny 6'2" teen he had been at the time of their meeting. Another welcome upside to the energy Henri had shared with him. Henri had made a similar offer to the old man that owned this gorgeous sprawl of land, a chance to live through many moons. Yet the old man had refused, a refusal that gained him even more respect in Henri's eyes. After all, so many mortals were consumed with the need to live longer. "Shall I accompany you, sire?" came the rumble of 𝐵𝐿𝐴's accented English. "You have a call to make, yes?" Henri replied. "Da. Mother is not well." "Then do that." "As always, feel free to take a walk," Henri replied. The Russian never left to walk the acres of lush green. The need to always be within reach of the turbocharged car trumping any interest in exploration. His loyalty was absolute. "Sire," 𝐵𝐿𝐴's simple acknowledgement, before unbuckling his seatbelt to come around to open the rear car door. Buttoning the middle button of another immaculate blazer, this one a deep mahogany in color, Henri fitted the wide brim hat atop his head before striding over to where the angel, Duma, stood in wait. "Greetings, old friend." "Salutem," Duma responded in the old language, the punch of his eyes, half white, half black, a thing that to this day still raised the hairs on the back of Henri's neck. "Are you here on official business or with Crocel?" "He will live still." "For how long, I do not know. But there is no need for my presence at his bedside this eve." Duma rarely spoke lengthy sentences, making it important to pay heed whenever he did manage to string a few together. Satisfied with the news, Henri turned away from the front of the house to take the path along the side that led to the expanse of land behind. "Out back," he called over his shoulder, only to find that the angels with wings that started light gray from where they joined his back and intensified to black at the tips had fallen soundlessly into step at his side. Above, Duma replied instead. I shall meet her over the next hill, Henri replied, stopping at the back veranda that overlooked the lay of land. The angel took off in a vacuum of sound, the silence that was his very being, removing all sound of his departure. The only indication that he had left was the wind that tickled the back of Henri's head. Unbuttoning his blazer, Henri neatly folded it in half before resting both blazer and hat on the seat that would normally hold his weight. Rolling back his sleeves to just below his elbow, he strode out towards the rendezvous point. The sun's underbelly had just dipped below the flat land, staining the razor grass orange as it took its leave. This part of the old immortal's estate played home to over 150 cows, their presence for no other reason than company. The family business had turned enough profit for him that there was no need to export the breed, content to enjoy his now retirement. The only security on the estate came in the form of 3 golden retrievers that often roamed the expanse of wooden railings running parallel to each side of the property. Most times, however, they were focused on their own quests, too preoccupied by the scent of an errant lizard. There was a certain freedom in this land. Each time Henri visited, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. To see that this patch of the world remained undisturbed, free of the stain of chaos spreading across the globe. A winged shadow passed over the grass he walked upon, its wingspan temporarily blotting out the sun, before flying off towards the clouds once more. Henri watched her soar, a hand above his eyes to shield the glare. His eyes swirled a warm brown as they traced the movement of the angel with wings the color of the clearest blue sky. At that moment, she folded her wings as if she were a dove. Her sand-colored hair streamed down her neck, pressed against her skin by the speed at which she plummeted, angled for where Henri stood in wait. Somewhere in a distant corner of centuries-old memories, the spectator felt the stirrings of an age-old memory, the space between his shoulder blades itching with sensory flashbacks. Tilting his head, he saw Crocelle flare her powerful wings, their insides a deeper blue than the outside layer, as about him dust swirled with the force of wind that accompanied her arrival. Hovering 3 feet off the ground, she stared at him with her legendary mocking expression for a brief second, before landing on light feet. The red of the ankle-length dress she wore flowed over bare feet as she strode towards where Henri stood. 6 feet of lush, lethal angel, hair falling over the front of her shoulder to end just below the curve of her breast. Her stomach was flat and toned as the dress clung to her midsection before flaring slightly at her hips. She appeared soft, akin to a goddess, yet the potential for violence lay across the slightly broad shoulders that contained lean fighting muscles from countless dances of battle. Her chin had a soft curve to it, full lips pink in the evening sun. Eyes, the color of crushed blueberries dipped in the rich marble of her skin, bored deeply into Henri's. She greeted him in the customary fashion of their ilk, a grasp of his shoulders, before pulling his forehead to touch her own, as words of the old language spilled from her lips. Bonum estete, decidimos altius sugure. It is good to see you. We have fallen to rise even higher. It is good to see you also. For now, we fly freely, Henri responded in the same language. Breaking the contact of their heads, 𝐶𝐍𝐍𝐄𝐒 held him at arm's length to further examine him. Satisfied with whatever it was she saw, she dropped her hands from his shoulders. Shall we walk? Henri held out his arm in invitation, smiling as a familiar weight he had not felt in 6 decades pressed once more into his sides, the ends of her hair sliding across his face as an evening breeze brushed across the pair. The pair of immortals walked in silence for acres on end, no pressing need to discuss matters, simply enjoying the silence between them. There was a time they had walked like this on the eve of every night. Two like-minded individuals through the heavenly gardens as they carried out their observations of the then newly created creatures. The land that lay beneath their souls was nothing compared to that of paradise. This one had and without love. Paradise was just that. Paradise. It existed still, though neither 𝐶𝐍𝐍𝐄𝐒 nor Henri had seen its pastors since the casting out and the war that had ensued. They came to a stop on the crest of a small hill overlooking a waterhole, arms unfolding. When will you return, brother? Why? The two most senior angels are missing from beneath, and you ask why? He is missing? Open disbelief colored Henri's voice, knowing that their king was not one to shirk his duties. No one knows where he has gone, and the most senior of us are already stretched thin attempting to maintain order. Tell me more, he demanded, tone growing hard as the feeling of foreboding crawled his skin. After all, the last time Lucifer had walked the earth, we have been holding back the masses thus far, but there are those that still manage to slip our patrol. 𝐶𝐍𝐍𝐄𝐒 paused before continuing. It will only be a matter of time before someone finds a portal. And what would you have me do? Henri asked, softly, mind still racing as he searched for a possible reason behind Lucifer's disappearance. Return to us, regain your strength, and assist in bringing this tide under control. Your leadership is needed. I was never to rule, 𝐶𝐍𝐿, he replied, as his eyes looked out over the horizon. I chose this path because of its solitary nature. It is one which I can carry out well. So you would potentially doom us all for your selfish peace of mind? If I can find the 4 keys, there would be no war, Henri replied. You hope, she countered. Speaking of hope, Henri thought, mind drifting back to the little bundle of infant that lay in her house. The child, called Hope, carried a fragment of his energy within her. He had not yet decided how he felt about that particular connection. Aloud, he asked, You know why they are pressing for escape? The same as always, resenting the terms of their imprisonment. But And of course, there are those who wish to ride the waves of war and conflict, she continued over his would-be sentence. Izzy and Baal are beginning to fear he may have been summoned. No, he exhaled furiously. Do you remember what he did to the last cult that attempted to summon him? Oh, do I? She replied sarcastically. Their screams still sound in the throne room. What a way to go, he thought. Destroyed by the very being you attempted to summon, then being forced to serve penance in the very place you attempted to summon that same being from. The life of a fallen angel was not a place for pity, a reality Henri reminded himself of every day, using the need to break free of the vicious cycle as motivation to fuel his need for salvation. I must return, 𝐶𝐿 said, snapping out her wings as with one beat she lifted off of the ground, scribing an intricate pattern with her hands before pointing to the ground beneath her feet. Do not come looking for me, 𝐶𝐿. I must do this alone. You are weak, Yaz, she said, using a name that felt odd even to his own ears. I will be fine. If I fail, then our falling would have been for naught. Do you intend to fail? What is this insipid alias you go by, Mr. Donoma? Lips thinning with displeasure at her own words. Farewell for now, 𝐶𝐿. Tell the others to hold fast. I will get word to you if I find any trace of our king. A beam of light enveloped 𝐶𝐿's body, its color blood red, a deeper shade than her dress. She sank slowly, disappearing feet first into the portal that had opened at her command. As her chin disappeared below the surface, she blew him a kiss, lips stained red under the beam's luminescence. Turning to greet the silent angel that had landed at his side, as the beam of light faded with 𝐶𝐿's departure, Henri inquired, Where will you go now, strange one? There are some I must visit before this day is done, Duma responded, the land holding a hush as the sun's departure was almost complete. In the distance, the crow of a strutting cock reached their ears. Does it ever become challenging work, ushering death the way you do? Henri asked. The angel, more famously known among immortals as the Silence of Death, paused for a moment, lashes closing briefly over his unique eyes. No, it is what I was created to do. The walk back to the house was a solitary one, Henri's mind troubled by a multitude of thoughts. Drawing closer to the house, he saw that it still remained without light, a darkness that could only mean that his young friend, who by mankind would be considered an elder, was indeed nearing the end of his tenure of life, the need for more rest weighing upon aged bones. Yet still, Henri would persevere. The four keys of the apocalypse would not find themselves. Sire, 𝐿𝐔𝐘𝐒 greeted at the side of the already open back door to the vehicle. Let us depart. Next stop, Trinidad. Yes, Henri thought to himself. It was time to move dormant pieces into play. The car door closed with a firm touch. End of episode. Well, 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 the plot certainly is getting thicker with each episode. Almost as thick as cold peanut butter. Henri on his way to Trinidad? I guess we'll have to stick around to find out what and why and who and all of the other things in between. Before I let you go, I just want to let you know that I appreciate the time you have made in stopping by for some narration and conversation. Continue taking great care of yourself. Until next time, and as always, love and light.